Hi, Jeremy. Welcome to Hiring on All Cylinders.
Hey, Chris, how's it going? Thanks for having me here today.
You're absolutely welcome. So I thought we'd get kind of stuck in straight away, really. And I know that you've been solving some really big hiring challenges for Informatica over the last year or so. And it pertains to hiring in India and you're building a capability in India. And I know that India is an incredibly high growth economy, especially for technology companies. And leaders are either facing that challenge now of how to build capability there, or they will do at some point in the future. It's going to be a destination if you're looking to be a global talent leader at some point, right? So I guess it'd be really great to understand from your point of view, what was the problem you were solving when you as a team decided to look at India as a hub?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, so Informatica has been, core development centers in just Bangalore in India for a long time now. One of the things that we were challenged with was how do we build more capabilities outside of just Bangalore across India? And some of the challenges that we saw was from a hiring perspective, the market is dramatically different between North America, Europe. And when we look at India, the velocity from a talent acquisition standpoint, extremely fast, very hard to kind of validate skills and understand, are we bringing the right talent into the organization? Just to give everyone a little bit of an example, from a recruitment standpoint, we open up a software engineer job that gets 500 applicants within 7 days of getting posted. So we had a really, really challenging from a recruitment productivity standpoint. I couldn't get it to all the candidates, nearly within a week or 2 weeks or forever. And ultimately, we created somewhat of a bad experience for our candidates, so damaged our brand in the market. So one of the things that we did really kind of early, probably about 3 years ago, when we started really seeing this snowball for us, is the volume for hiring dramatically picked up. We probably do over 60% of our hiring in India. So prior years when we were busy, we were doing 2,000 requisitions a year, so over 1,000 hires in India. So we noticed this problem. We started looking at technical assessment tools to really help us in kind of two different spots. Was how do we really identify and find critical top-notch talent at the beginning of the funnel, but then also deeper into the funnel from a recruitment standpoint, how do we eliminate some of the additional interviews that the teams are doing, which created elongated interview process as well as a poor experience for our candidates. So ultimately, with the technical assessment tool that we implemented, we were able to kind of go through those 500 applicants, which within 2 to 3 days, and then ultimately started establishing benchmarks from the output of the technical assessment to say 70, 80% of whatever they score in the assessment, that was good enough for us to start the typical recruitment process. And so we really did the top of funnel technical assessment for mid to junior level resources, which was extremely benefit. We were able to get through candidates a lot quicker. And then ultimately, when the managers got the candidates within the interview process, they felt more comfortable that some of the basic technical skills were already validated as part of that assessment. So they went from your traditional 5 rounds of interviews down to 2 to 3 rounds, and we're making hiring selections immediately, which dramatically sped up our time to fill. So we were probably about 50 days before the technical assessment. And at the end of the, full rollout and piloting of it, we're down to about 35 days in India. So we're able to kind of, based on the peak in the market, how competitive that market was, really meet the demand from a 35 days time to fill, but also ensure that we're getting the right talent into Informatica.
Awesome. That's really interesting. And so had you always been hiring in India just at lower volumes and or was that driven by a cost thing or just an availability of talent? What was the main kind of business driver behind scaling those operations up?
Yeah, so the main driver was cost, extremely cost beneficial for us to continue to span more in India. But as kind of we led up to COVID, we were starting, and even during the kind of Great Resignation, we started seeing attrition start picking up. People were trading companies over, 20, 30% increases. So we really needed to ramp up our hiring efforts so that we could cover the gap from an attrition standpoint. I think our chief product officer at the time had a goal of we needed net 250 engineers every quarter. And so we had about I don't know, 100 people leaving every quarter. So we need to hire 150 incremental in order to keep up with the demand from an engineering standpoint.
And that was kind of global attrition that you were looking to backfill with talent in India.
That's correct. Yep. We generally see when we'd have attrition in North America or EMEA, we'd probably see 3 or 4, maybe even 5 engineers get replaced in India.
Wow. And the technical assessment tool, what did you end up using?
So we've been Filtered AI. It's a small company out of Boston. We looked at a lot of different vendors out in the market, and what I really and my team enjoyed about Filtered AI is ease of use. A lot of the technical assessment tools, you need developers or managers in engineering to be able to set up the tests to figure out what are the right tests for the roles you're trying to fill. The great thing about Filtered AI is you can copy and paste a job description into their platform. It reads the job description, it understands the skills that are listed within there, and it will propose a 3 to 5 question technical assessment. So ease of use for the recruiters to be able to design technical assessments and then hand it off to the engineering managers to say, does this test for the appropriate level of skills? And they were able to see the output from a candidate perspective, so that prior to us going out to the market, we could easily validate the test with the hiring managers. I would say the other benefit with Filtered is they have video capability. So a little bit of what's different in India is there are, fraudulent cases. So you might have other people taking the technical assessment, another person showing up for the interview, but it also tracked kind of IP. We're still a pretty hybrid on-site type of organization. So if someone was taking, let's just say, the test in California and we needed the person to be in India, it was a good way for us to validate like a specific location for those particular individuals prior to wasting any of the critical interviewing time going through a process and finding out they weren't in the same location.
Super interesting. I've not actually come across Filtered AI, but I'll definitely check that out. In terms of, some of the times and some of the feedback I've heard about technical assessment tools is, hiring managers have an issue with the quality of tests, or they want to build their own tests, or they don't trust it. And I know you just mentioned that you managed to get the hiring managers really on board and kind of trusting that filtering from the platform. Was that a process? And do you have any kind of tricks or tools for people to help get managers on board with that testing criteria?
I think a lot of it, so the approach that I took was really getting buy-in from a small group of hiring managers first when we first selected Filtered AI. And then ultimately, once we saw it kind of take off, we then started creating kind of standard tests based on key functional areas. And although maybe the managers didn't trust the test, but ultimately we were able to see high-performing engineers in the score they got that we hired on other teams. And then we'd go to a new team to say, well, look, this team hired the same engineer, and the one that we're presenting to you, their score was much higher. So it kind of just was a snowball effect. Once we piloted it with small teams, they started talking to the other managers, and they just saw really the reduction in churn between the number of interviews they had to go through to get to an offer. It was a major difference between one with a test and one with the test. Typically, without a test, it was about 15 candidates to get one hire. Now we're down to about 7-8 candidates to get one hire. So almost a 50% reduction there.
Talentful provides flexible recruiting solutions to the world's most ambitious companies. Are you thinking about ways to add flexibility to your talent function? With recent market volatility and hiring set to return to growth mode in the near future, there's never been a better time to choose the right partner to help you scale. Talentful's embedded sourcing, recruiting, coordination, and talent advisory services have been trusted by the world's leading brands. Companies such as Atlassian, Microsoft, Expedia, Pinterest, Waymo, and more. Whether you're hiring across engineering, go-to-market, or G&A, Talentful has got you covered. To find out how Talentful can help you, visit talentful.com. Wow. So leading, trialing it and then leading with the data that you have to influence the rest of the organization. That's that. And I mean, imagine the amount of the amount of highs and interviews you must have been doing at the peak there. you must have saved an absolute fortune in interview time.
Exactly.
That's incredible. And I know you mentioned that, there were quite a few challenges and differences between North America and India. What would you say is the biggest learning for you and the team, being successful in India? I know you mentioned this high volume and the candidate experience. I know that we spoke about before, where your team was located and, figuring that out where the team's best placed. Could you talk about that, or maybe anything else that you found a big challenge?
Yeah. So one of the other challenges that we noticed with India was really a huge drop-off rate of candidates accepting jobs and actually showing up. I would say North America, Europe, 99% of the people that accept offers, they're going to show up day one. We, especially in the engineering team, we probably had a 50% drop ratio in India. So that was a major challenge for us because we invested all this time in interviewing, and then we get to almost day one and we're hearing that candidates are renegotiating with us. So a couple of things that we did, and we noticed a pretty good benefit was we started implementing more automation into post-offer activities. So we use Access or Automation Anywhere, an RPA tool, to really start streamlining some of the activities that we felt were critical touch points for both the recruiters as well as the hiring managers to really create engagement points throughout that process, because the notice period typically in India is anywhere from 60 to 90 days based on the seniority of that candidate. So we currently have weekly emails out to our candidates from Automation Anywhere. They're personalized emails. We send them content. We send them videos. We send checkpoints for our managers to check in with new hires. And it really helped us kind of somewhat decrease that drop rate and get a higher success of people actually showing up, because we felt that if the recruiters and hiring managers were in tune and excited about those new hires showing up on day one, we had a higher likelihood of them actually showing up. So that was one of the big benefits there. And then we really needed to kind of rethink our compensation philosophy. We had this culture of if someone came back and asked for 10% higher, we would say, well, we're not going to renegotiate. So I would say my advice to talent leaders that are going into India, it's a negotiation battle. So you got to make sure that your compensation team's on board. A 5 to 10% increase, maybe 3 or 4 days before they start, is not unrare, because the competition in India is so high for engineering, front, back end, UI developers. We got to more of a flexible comp arrangement where we might renegotiate right before their start date in order to get that talent on board.
Wow. And can you talk about maybe that process? I'm assuming that at the start, maybe the compensation and benefits team weren't necessarily on board with that. Was there a way that you went about that partnership and tried to create a slick process? Because obviously the challenge of creating and negotiating new offers that seem to start date is tough for a lot of teams. How did you guys do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I personally tried to articulate to our total rewards team was look at all the time and effort that's going in on the front end of the process. We're wasting valuable time. And by the time you get to renegotiating 10%, the time and effort from an engineering capabilities or recruiting capabilities, as well as just an onboarding capabilities, the 10% was somewhat of a wash. And I would say the challenge was, generally speaking, Radford or any of the compensation tools are probably a little bit of a lagging from how hot the market is. So especially as we saw, post-COVID, comp ranges heated up very quickly. So we just needed to build that kind of trust and relationship with our comp team. That 10% increase prior to start date was going to be something acceptable. And then when we looked at it from like an ROI perspective, the money we put into it, this is a wash, and it's more beneficial for us to get them to start.
And did you mentioned the automation of the kind of post-offer touch points. You started and you said you were somewhere around a 50% drop rate, especially with engineers after offer acceptance. Did you see a massive improvement there in the metrics? Like, what did you manage to get it to or close to?
We're probably around about a 20% currently.
Oh wow,
which is still not great, but still about a 30% reduction, which really helped. Just drive engagement. It was more so like managers were busy doing their development work, and they forgot about their new hires because it was 30, 60 days down the road. And so just driving touch points with the manager to show that excitement to new hires that we were still thinking about them, it helped reduce.
Yeah, excellent. And I know that another thing that you've looked at, and it's been really successful for Informatica and your team, has been the internship programs. Could you maybe talk a bit about those, why you decided to do them and how you set them up and the success of those programs?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say intern program for me personally has been a really kind of source of, close to my heart, because I kind of grew up real fast through the ranks. And when I came to Informatica, we had a marginal intern program. It wasn't very much volume, but ultimately we were out going to the market looking for more junior resources. So we decided to really increase the volume, which I think kind of aligned with kind of pre-COVID when we needed to ramp up our development resources. And so we really focused on how do we effectively get a wider reach for our interns from a lot of the top tier colleges in India, to be able to bring that great talent who might not necessarily know about Informatica. We have about 2,500 people in India. We're not the big name household names like Oracle, Facebook, Amazon, whatever. So some of those colleges didn't really know about it. So we have a small campus team. We started building relationships with those campuses. They have a thing in India that has MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. So we started going out to universities to see if we could partner with them to teach Informatica products as part of their computer science organization, so that they were more familiar with our product offering, where we sat kind of in the infrastructure space, so that there was more demand and need for, awareness around Informatica. And then ultimately we kind of capitalized on with the technical assessment. With the technical assessment, we decided to have a little bit of fun, because we only had 2 people on our campus team. We couldn't go out to all the campuses to go do on-site tech talks, go there to assess the students. So 2 years ago, we started a infothon is what we called it. It's kind of like a codathon. We created like a contest where the top 10 people, we gave away prizes and Amazon vouchers. And it really kind of took off for us because during COVID, we couldn't travel, we couldn't go on site. So we created an online campaign, sent it out to all the universities. The first year we had about 7,500 students complete the test. And based on that kind of infothon, we were able to fill our entire intern program of about 100 interns.
Incredible.
It was super successful. We redid it this year. And we did 17,000 people took the online coding test. So huge uptick, took off in the market. And we were able to, again, we spent zero expense going out to campus. We were able to get a lot of brand awareness about who we were as an organization, and a lot of excitement around it, and really saved a whole bunch of time and effort from going out to these universities and hiring our intern program. Now, the benefits by us doing a technical assessment, getting a wider reach from our campus program, is we made some significant impacts on our DE&I efforts, especially in India. We've been going down this journey as an organization of how do we improve our overall representation as an organization. And I would say India was the most critical spot for us because of the availability of diverse talent in India is pretty darn close to about, I would say, 60-40, so 60% males, 40% females in the space that we needed. And so we set pretty aggressive goals with our intern programs where we said we're going to hire 50% of our internship program females, so 50-50 balance. And then ultimately, based on, year over year, we've done that. India, we probably went up about 5 percentage points from a female representation across our whole organization. And I would credit that all back to intern program and thinking about setting aggressive goals of how the early talent comes into the organization.
That's really, really amazing. And was there a specific way you attracted more diverse talent, or you positioned your brand to attract diverse talent?
I would say the big thing that we thought about differently was we went out to more female-only organizations. So we tapped into other new universities that we never, thought about tapping into, so that I would say the exposure was more balanced approach. But also as organization, we were very mindful of, how we positioned this out in the market. We also did a women's only coding-thon. So it resonated really well within the Indian market. And just, I think by being out front and center, living our values as we were marketing this, as we're looking for, diverse representation to the organization, it just really created a lot of buzz and noise within the market, and we were able to achieve those aggressive goals.
It sounds like you've had such, huge success in India, and obviously these different programs of work that you delivered over time seem to have been incredibly impactful for, obviously the Indian market, but the company as a whole. In terms of the teams that were delivering this work, was this all delivered by your internal teams, or did you outsource any of it to third parties?
All of this has just been done by my internal team. It's really a team of two, like I said. And it was just a little bit of thinking about things differently. And it's not just taking the traditional approach that we did. And we were able to deliver it pretty much no cost. Obviously, we had to pay for the technical assessment vendor and some of the prizes that we offered out there. But based on the market, how competitive it is, if you have the right story, you have the right kind of, market positioning, it was super successful for us and easy to do, quite honestly.
And are the team members that you have, are they based in India?
Yep, both of them are based in India. They've been, pretty long-standing campus program individuals. So I would just say it's a little bit of how do we rethink the traditional campus program to take in a different approach to get, more awareness out in the market.
And you seem, from this conversation, you seem quite an early adopter or just a general adopter of technology, when using it in the recruitment process, whether it's Filter AI or the automation tools that you use. How do you broadly think about, technology as a way of achieving your business's goals? And do you have a methodology of assessing, deciding when to use technology?
Yeah, so I think when I first started here at Informatica, I think one of the challenges was we had way too many tools. Recruiters had, 6 different sourcing tools. We had, external website. We had an external referral portal. It just kind of complicates the kind of core stack. So ultimately, when I first came here, I built a data warehouse with all of the applicant tracking data that spits out into it. So ultimately, we were able to look at things like to better understand usage of the sourcing tools. Where did we get, candidates from? Where did we hire them from? Which was a really baseline thing. But then when you started putting the price on it to understand your cost per hire by vendor, it was quite alarming to see that we had way too many tools and we needed to slim it down. So ultimately, my approach from a technology standpoint is to really understand, what are the key pain points that the recruiters are going through, but then also looking at it from a lens of candidates. We were noticing when we didn't have a technical assessment tool, we would auto DQ all of those 400 or 500 people off the requisition. We'd close the requisition, poof, all those candidates went into the ATS, and we weren't doing rediscovery of candidates. So for me, it's understanding where are the most repeatable processes that we're doing, and are we continuing that journey with candidates post, the requisition or post the conversation. So I really look at will my recruiters buy into a piece of technology? So typically when I'm assessing tools, I typically bring a couple of the recruiters or the recruiting managers along to say, I think this is a great opportunity for us. Are you bought into it? And typically I feel like if you can get the people that are doing the hands-on work involved early and bought into the solution, then when you do buy it and you do put it into practice, they're the ones actually driving that conversation. So that's kind of my approach. And then ultimately, since I have all the data to be able to kind of reevaluate the purchase, it's always looking back on a year-to-year basis to say, is it driving the expected value that we wanted to drive? And if it's not, then we got to go look out in the market for something different.
That kind of leads me on to my final question for you, Jeremy. I guess there's lots of talk at the moment about AI in recruiting and all these new tools and how it's going to transform the TA space. I guess, what are you most excited about when it comes to the future of TA?
I think for the future of TA, I hope with all of the AI talk, I think hopefully some of the AI can help solve some of the major challenges that TA leaders are having, especially when we get back to hiring. I think one of the major challenges is from a candidate being able to understand what position do they fit best within your organization. One of our challenges we have is we might post 20 software engineers, all principal level software engineers at once on our website. And the reason why we post them all is every manager wants to see their job posted out there. But when you think about it from a candidate perspective, they see 20 principal software engineer jobs, they apply to every single one. So I'm excited to see, how can technology or how can AI help kind of that journey from a candidate standpoint to be able to match them to the appropriate level, to the appropriate job, maybe based on their resume, maybe based on an assessment, but you still don't lose track of those candidates in the future.
Awesome. Well, I've learned a ton during this conversation, Jeremy. Thanks a lot for your time, and chat to you soon.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate your time.